All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth episode of Walking the Path. I'm here with Kristen today, and I really am looking forward to our conversation. And how about as an opener, Kristen, do you want to talk a little bit about who you are and what you love most in life right now?
Hi. Yes. Thanks, Christine. I'm glad to be here again with you. And I've been navigating a really interesting path myself. 2016 has been a really dynamic year where I've been called to step into a lot of different scenarios that I wouldn't have ever predicted myself becoming a part of. And I've been studying something called the Gene Keys lately, which you're familiar with, and my life's purpose at the highest vibration. I've really enjoyed this because I went, wow, that requires a lot of surrender, which I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but it says, be the easel where the universe can paint its imagination across the canvas, or something like that. I totally didn't do it justice, but so basically be a blank canvas for the universe to share what it needs to share through you. And I'm just like, wow, that's a big job, but sounds really fun too, and always changing. And so I've sort of felt like a chameleon this year, where I've come into a lot of leadership roles and support roles in various communities that I've been finding myself calling home, and also in our traveling. And so I'm sort of a chameleon of spiritual support. Yeah, that feels good. And here we are recording these Walking the Path episodes. I don't even know how this happened, but it's fun, and it's constantly changing and shifting. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here again and sharing this time with you.
Awesome. And I'm so grateful to be here with you. And I know for me too, this year for me has been a year of dynamic change, like really on the physical level, a lot of moving, a lot of shifting and moving provinces, and just not even reestablishing quite yet. It really feels like that true walking the path in the moment to moment, week to week nature of living. And I know for me, this year's required a lot of going in, really seeing what's true for me and reevaluating where I would like to go and how I would like to show up in the world, and knowing that isn't a definitive answer. It's not this is it, I'm done, now I just live my purpose. Really knowing, like, being me is, and expressing and receiving and allowing, all these elements are all aspects of me being me, and really living on that adventure and acknowledging that, yeah, there's no one answer, but just really being present for the adventure. And I know that does benefit me in my client work and in my classes that I'm delivering, because I'm so in the moment and in tune with what's going on for me and the class participants or the person I'm delivering the session to. And for those who haven't watched other episodes, my background's in counseling, and then I've expanded upon that work with a lot of consciousness and spiritual development, but just coming to that point of integration, really living fully and getting to open the heart and love and understand the emotional body, and go beyond the understanding into the pure being with the emotional body. So all those things that we can just use words to point to, but they don't always capture the essence of it. So yeah, as we tune into this moment of now, what feels like the most relevant conversation for us to be having, Kristen?
Yeah, so well, where we're located in the Pacific Northwest, it's winter, and it's been a bit unusually cold here, and we're approaching the longest, darkest days of winter here, approaching the winter solstice. And something we've been noticing in a lot of our network of people in our community and friends and family is the tendency for people to withdraw from their circles of support when they're having a hard time. And we're really feeling like there could be a bit of a movement toward shifting the dynamics of what's acceptable to present in social gatherings. I think we've been trained as a culture to put your best face forward and just smile. When someone says, "How are you doing?" to just go, "Oh, I'm doing really great. How are you?" And it's really often not the case. And I think there's a lot of emotional suppression happening. And I personally don't think that's healthy for any of us. And really, in our culture, we're taught behind closed doors, or when you're seeking the help of a professional counselor or something like that, those are the times it's okay to cry and to just show how hard of a time you're having. And I think that's nonsense. And wow. Okay, so I just want to talk about that because I've been there lots in my life. I had a pattern for many years where I had depression in the winter and I really struggled. I managed to break out of that pattern a number of years ago, and I'm really grateful. But I have the compassion and understanding for people that are still in that place, because it's hard and it can feel dark and lonely. And so I just want to talk about how that can be different. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know for me too, I had a pattern where I decided that almost if I expressed emotion in the company of other people, I was being a burden. And I didn't want to burden them with my emotion. It was something that I felt I had to deal with on my own. But yet there's this moment came where I looked at, well, I love being there with other people when they're truly expressing what's going on for them. And I love offering that support and presence and love to them. So what if I was willing to receive that myself? And there was something in me that was developed very early on in life that just said, it's not available, people aren't capable, or some sort of storyline or decision that I had in place that just kept me from allowing that in and acknowledging that it was available and there are new people in my life and they totally had the capacity to be there. And if anything, it created greater intimacy when I allowed them to be there with and for me. And so what would it be like if we could acknowledge that many of us, through our own personal development and exploration, have learned to really be present when we're feeling and when we have emotions. So to the extent that we've developed our capacity is the extent that we can be that and with other people in our lives. So when we tune in, like say if those of you listening or tuning into this video, if you're to really tune into the people you have in your lives now, are there some people who really would love to offer you some emotional support and just really be there with you however you're feeling? Because often many of us have through the years brought people in and called people in who do have the capacity for it, but we're still functioning from old ideas based on our original family structure that says, nope, I'll do it on my own, don't want to burden anyone, instead of really testing the waters and saying what is actually true now. It's not so much dumping the emotions on others or wanting them to validate them and yes, you have a right to be depressed and upset and life sucks. It's more just like, people who have that skill set of like, wow, I feel you and I'm here. And that is that magic of being able to transmute the emotion through that unconditional presence with it, which many of us have the capacity to do and be now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I can echo that, what you said about feeling like a burden or feeling like you're asking too much of others or inconveniencing them. And I went through that, pardon me, also from childhood, feeling like showing any emotion or asking for help was not okay and not supported. And I see it in myself sometimes still, and that kind of independence and self-sufficiency that can get to the point where it's actually harming more than helping. And so being able to ask for help or to say to someone, I'm having a really hard time right now. I'd love it if we could get together for a cup of tea. I could just really use some good company right now, and I liked what you said about, raising the consciousness of our collective and getting to the point where we're not dumping our emotions and our trouble right in front of other people, right out on the table, and expecting that they're going to have the magic answers for us, or that they're going to validate and say, yeah, you should feel that way. Grr, you know, it's in the next steps of our human evolution as a collective to not support people remaining in that energetic space, but to give them the loving support. It's about support, not enabling, right? It's about saying, I hear you. I can see how hard of a time you're having. And to validate that. And then, you know, potentially moving forward to, you know, ask questions. I've been finding when people are having a really hard time, you know, they don't necessarily want advice, but by asking questions, just gentle questions to people, it allows us to go within ourselves and to question ourselves, you know, like, what's really going on here? Is there some way I can support myself in addition to the love and support I'm asking for from others?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I know for me, what shifted was when I gained the skills to emotionally attend to myself, right? Give myself permission to feel like it's okay to feel this, I'm here. Developing that muscle of giving myself that presence and attention. And thus, when the time came for me to break down the walls of deciding that other people couldn't offer that, then I was actually able to receive it because I was being it with myself. So thus I could receive it from others. Often if we haven't developed that tool of that presence with our emotional body, when other people offer it, we often will push them away, or, oh, they just want something, or we'll develop some sort of storyline around it rather than the true acknowledgement of where we're at, which is really many of us have the capacity to both go within and offer and be present with emotion rather than trying to get ourselves and other people out of it as fast as possible, which many of us were trained to do, and which creates that culture of put on a happy face and hide and even take a pill to avoid yourself having to feel it in your own time. And that's what we're coming out of, is I can feel it as much as I require to feel it, and I can acknowledge those moments when it would benefit me to have someone else there, because many of our initial like tendencies to emotionally suppress was just learned behavior in relationships. So it is doing our own work and also acknowledging that through having people there really mirroring that unconditional love and presence, it does help to heal and resolve and release any relationship trauma. We're around people who didn't have that skill set. So we develop it, we can offer it, and more receive it. And yeah, really coming out of that need to suppress or hide or isolate unless we're feeling good. And so I guess I would invite anyone watching this to really acknowledge where you're at with that and what could be different if you chose for it to be different. Noticing your tendencies to isolate or want to be alone when you're not doing well, or just wanting to talk to people when you're doing good, and questioning whether that serves you and whether there's another way. I know for me, it has assisted me tremendously to break that pattern. And I also still notice some tendencies in myself to do that. And I've noticed that even someone will send an email like, how are things going for you? And I'll actually delay my response because it's like I want to respond when I'm like, they're great. I'm really happy with where I'm at. It's so funny to even notice I still hold some of those tendencies to want to wait until I have good news to share instead of being like, well, it's not awesome. I'm grateful for blah, 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 right? So just to acknowledge where we're at and do our best to come under judgment of it so that we have more choices available. And sometimes it is so relevant to go within and spend that time self-nurturing. And in other moments, it's really required and would assist a lot to be around other people in that and know that it's safe and okay to express that in the company of other people. So just acknowledging what the inherent patterns are and being willing to change them.
Absolutely. And I know we kind of waffled on bringing this up, but it just feels really relevant right now. I got a really clear picture of social media and the illusion that it gives to a lot of people that they're socializing and that they have in a network of people, and we all do have the people we're connected to through social media. but it just really pales in comparison to being in the physical form around people that love and care about all of us, right? Each other and human beings. I truly support the idea and the concept, and it feels true in me that we're a tribal species, that we, that we need each other, I was listening to something recently, and I can't remember what it was, but he was talking about, many millennia ago, or not even that long ago, probably centuries ago, if someone was extracted or booted out of the tribe, they probably weren't going to make it. And for many reasons, emotional, energetic, physical, bodily needs. And I think it's where our society is really going astray right now. And this ties in a few concepts because when I was younger, I was on antidepressants. It started in my late teens, and I was going through a really pretty wild shift in my awareness and my reality. And, my family viewed it as a mental illness, or like I was going crazy or something. And, they were worried for me. They didn't know what to do. And so anyway, to make the story really short, I ended up on some antidepressant, anti-anxiety medications, and I was on them for a number of years. And I'll take out all the details, but I remember so clearly the day I was living in Alberta, in Calgary. And I remember the day that I looked in the mirror, like I was just at one of those points where I was like, I've had enough of XYZ, whatever. And I looked in the mirror, and a little voice in me said, no one else can help you the way you can help yourself if you decide to take that step. And in that moment, I decided I was going to wean myself off of these pills. And I did, and I've never turned back. And I swore to myself I would never go down that road again, because there are other ways. And I think I know that being able to be vulnerable and truthful and allow ourselves to connect from a heart space with other human beings replaces the need for most antidepressant medications. I know it for sure. I have family members that have been on them and are on them, and I have friends that have been on them and are on them, and I don't want to tell anyone what to do, but I've planted the seed of, consider this shift in reality that's possible, because I've been there, and I just want to echo the idea that whatever our greatest pain has been in life, whatever our most profound traumas and healings have been revolving around, is what we potentially have to offer as some of our greatest gifts in this lifetime. And so I appreciate being able to discuss things where I have personal experience, and it sounds like you do a bit as well. And so it's nice to be able to talk about things when you've been there and done that, right? Because it's easy to talk about something in a theoretical way, but when you've actually experienced it, it just really solidifies the knowing within each of us that there are other ways to move forward with life, and that people don't have to be alone. They don't have to be isolated, and they don't have to live in a make-believe world of something like social media that, I have more to say, but I'm just going to let you talk a little bit. I have more to say about patterns that I've been noticing about people with social media and this struggle of loneliness. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, my primary thoughts on it are that it's a poor substitute for true connection, because especially our body, or the energetics of our body, when we have another body there, bodies communicate, right, energetically. And beyond that, there's the chance for touch, for that true meeting and acknowledgement of our bodies here. And when that isn't there, when our bodies don't have that chance to acknowledge love in the environment and receive love from the environment, they start to die on some level. Like they go into a pattern of suppressing a lot of those chemicals, the oxytocin, the dopamine, all those things that really contribute to the body system thriving. And so even though maybe us as a being or our spirit can benefit from commenting on Facebook or on someone's post or liking something, it really doesn't allow our whole body being complex to be seen, acknowledged, and embraced. And so it's just those places where we've learned to exchange what we truly require for what's convenient. It's kind of like, well, it only takes 2 minutes to prepare this food, so I'll have that because it's more convenient than taking more time to prepare and having the food that would really benefit me most. And that's, you know, choice points that we have now, is really being honest with ourselves, and is this truly offering what I require and allowing me to gift what I require and desire. And I know for me, one of the things I love is all the energy and that can move through my hands. So when I put my hands on someone, there's this tremendous flow of energy that moves through my body and through their body. And I often can perceive their whole nervous system relaxing. You know, I did massage for a couple of years, so every day I got to be in that flow. And I know it nurtured me so much to be able to have that circulation of energy. And when I'm not doing that, when my energy isn't moving in that way, say through my body and through my hand and through their body, there's this sense of loss, right? And I can adapt to it, right? That ability to adapt to what is here. But I've noticed in recent times, as I've included more of that in my life, both receiving touch and gifting touch, it just nurtures me so much. And there really is no substitution for that, regardless of how convenient it could be to connect in other ways. It really doesn't nurture our whole body being system. So
absolutely, yeah. And I was just laughing a little bit listening to you, because I remember one of the first times you and I got together in person, and we sat down at a table and had tea for a few hours. And one of the things I remember being that stands out for me in that meeting was eye contact. You are one of the most proficient eye contact makers that I've ever met. And it's funny, in our society, there's this awkwardness or this aversion to eye contact that I've noticed. And I do it sometimes too. But I was talking with a friend recently, and I said to her, you know I do this thing when I'm looking for the right words, or I'm letting a thought or a message come in, I tend to look away from the person I'm with, because I don't know what that is. But when I'm talking to someone, I really try to make a conscious effort to look at them. And it's funny to notice how many people look away when you're talking to them, or, you know, it's just really interesting. And I think for me, it's one of my personal kind of practices this year. I've really been trying to be aware of where my eyes are going and why, and what emotions are attached to my eyes averting a conversation. I mean, there's always things that can be super awkward where you're just like, ooh. But, you know, when you're having a good conversation, you know, why look at the floor? Why look at the sky? I mean, there's someone standing right in front of you. And I think it's potentially to do with social media again. Like, you know, people are forgetting how to look at each other and touch each other. And it's been really fascinating. And so back to another thought I was having about the social media, I feel like a pattern I'm noticing with social media. So it was back to what you said about not responding to an email if you're having a hard time. If someone's saying, hey, how are you doing? And you're like, not that good, so I'm going to wait and email you in a few days when I'm feeling really amazing and I have some good photos to share. And I've had so many scenarios on Facebook in particular. I'll send someone, and it happens with texting too, and I'll send someone a message. Often when I sense they are having a hard time, and when they aren't willing to get together in person, and I'm going, okay, well, I guess for me, the second best thing I can do is try to call. Okay, no answer. Okay, well, maybe I'll email or text or send a Facebook message. And it's funny because the way that Facebook works, you can often see when someone's online on certain devices. And so I'll reach out sometimes to someone who I know is having a hard time and has a pattern of avoidance. And I'll say, hey, I've been thinking of you. I hope you're doing okay. You know, do you want to get together? You know, to try to put out that invitation to get together in person. it's interesting how many times people will just not answer. And it's maybe not even that request you want to get together, but just reaching out, and if someone's having a hard time, they just ignore. And it's kind of interesting. I think a while back I'd probably take it personally, and I don't take it personally anymore because it's such a widespread epidemic that I'm noticing. And it's just not something I do, is to ignore someone who's reaching out to me. It's just not in my toolkit to ignore. And I think it's a coping mechanism for a lot of people who don't want to accept that loving hand reaching out, or that heart, that love reaching out, or I'm not sure what it is. But I would encourage people, if this applies to anyone that's listening, to ask yourself why that pattern, and to potentially consider opening up your heart to receiving that love and support from people that really genuinely do care about you and your well-being. And I'll just speak for myself in that I have a deep, deep desire for all humanity to move into a more loving, higher vibrational state of acceptance and communal support of one another, because really we're all in this together on this one little planet, and no one deserves more or less love in my reality. And anyway, so yeah, gathering in person. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I think that's the end of my thought there.
Yeah, just encouraging that shift and change. And primarily the first step is just through having that awareness of noticing what are the patterns, what are the tendencies. And I know for me, even maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, I sent a note to a friend that had sent a message to me on Facebook and I hadn't responded. And I sent a message to say, hey, I'm sorry for the delay in response. I noticed that when I wasn't doing as well or didn't have great things to report, that I was almost essentially waiting for that to come in before I responded. And so I just expressed that to this person, and to just change the pattern, right? I'm recognizing it and expressing it. And so it's losing its power, but it's through hiding what's really going on that things that don't work for us can maintain their power, right? But when we express it, someone could be like, hey, but just that ability to connect and come close is something that is not required on social media. So it's like people aren't exercising that muscle and they're denying the need for that closeness, or selling themselves on the idea that it's not available, or people are too busy, and then they'll line up with the people who are too busy and don't have time for them. So it's so much of it is self-created and self-perpetuated. And I know I've really recognized that for me as I've shifted and changed my beliefs and my points of views about things, like that one that I'm a burden, people, I don't want to inconvenience them. So then I would line up with people who would be inconvenienced if I expressed emotion. And when that changed to, I know I love to offer that, then I could line up with people who also love to offer that. So then there's that real synergy, right? Or symbiosis, where we're really contributing to each other in our bodies and our lives and all of that. So that more of those relationships are possible. But especially our point of view do create a reality. So if I had the point of view that no one has time for me, I will only be aware of the people who won't have time for me. And we're so psychic, we can be aware of those who won't. Whereas if I'm like, I know that there are so many people who love and appreciate me, and I'm going to really include them in my life and see them on a regular basis, then I'm going to become aware of the people who love and care for me and are willing to create that space and time for us to meet. So it truly is, your point of view creates a reality. So if you want to change your reality, change your point of view, acknowledge the points of views that you have about all these sorts of things, and be willing to consider something different. I know for me, there was a time when I had someone say to me, what if someone could be as present and loving with you and your emotions as you are with other people's? And at that time, it was like totally inconceivable. Like, that's not possible. And I noticed I almost had a fortress, like a really strong belief that wasn't available. And it was just in that moment, all I could do was, I wonder what that would be like. In this moment, I can't even conceive of it. I've decided it's not there. I've convinced myself of that for years. I have all sorts of evidence to prove it. But it was just that moment of consideration of what would that be like. So that's what I would say as the main invitation, is just when we feel like we can't change something, or we have so much evidence to prove it's true, just consider, like, what would it be like if this were different, so that it just initiates this little open door that can really expand, and then new experience can come in, and different evidence saying, oh, wow, people really love offering me support and time and attention. Wow, I love offering support, time and attention. And then it just initiates a whole new life and living, right? Because everything will shift and change around that, because it does feel so good, and it really honors and acknowledges all that we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. And I just wanted to throw out the idea that, we all need extra support and love sometimes. And I don't know anyone in my life who doesn't ever need that. And there are some people who have done a lot of work to maintain a level of awareness of their emotions and their thoughts and their attitude and perspective and perception, like you were saying. And I think they tend to have more time, let me say that differently, a greater sense of ease in life on a regular basis. I know I do, compared to where I was even 5 years ago. I really struggle with life a lot less. It's because I've changed my perspective. And, it took a bit of work to get there. It didn't just happen all of a sudden one day and I was like, wow, everything's amazing. It really took practice of catching myself and where my thoughts and my perceptions were and what my attitude was towards certain things. And, I still have moments where, maybe my attitude's not the best, and I have to really sit with that and ask myself what's going on. But I guess what I wanted to say is, there's always someone that's struggling in each of our realities that could use a hand to pull them up a little bit, for that little bit of lift and support. And, each one of us always has a need to reach up to someone else who can help pull us up to where we want to be. And there's this infinite ladder of human beings happening around the planet, I think, and it's consistently happening. It never stops. And I think really to go beyond human beings, I think it happens at a soul level. And I think there are different levels of evolution in souls and spirits, whatever word you choose to use. And I believe very strongly that there are some souls on the planet that are here, that they've been through all the soul stuff, and they're here to help those of us who still have more work to do on the soul level. And then there's new souls that are kind of just showed up, and they're like the freshmen in high school, with big deer eyes, and they have no idea what's happening, and they're having a hard time. And I think being humble and compassionate for as many people as possible in every moment of our lives is what really is collectively helping humanity to rise to the occasion and to overcome the challenges that we're facing as a collective consciousness right now. And so I really think allowing ourselves to become available, even if we think we're having the worst time ever, it's highly likely there's someone that's struggling more than we are. And to open up your perception and your reality, and I would just invite everyone to do that. And this is for me too, because I know there can be a tendency to contract sometimes, and to put up little walls around our hearts and to say, no, I think I've let enough in today, or I can't handle another person, or whatever it is we tell ourselves. But I think inviting in that awareness of, am I contracting or am I opening up to love? And how many people can I affect in a positive way today? I have to go out and run errands after we finish this call, and I know every time I go out into town, I have really positive interactions with pretty much every person I ever meet, whether it's in the post office or in the grocery store or at a gas station. It's my perception of reality, knowing that a lot of people are having a hard time every day, and they don't need anyone to have a bad attitude when they show up in their reality. and I just laugh to myself at some of the interactions that I have with people that I've never met before. And it's just, it brings me this incredible sense of opening, not contraction, and I sometimes get this little game of like, who am I going to meet next? And like, what's the conversation going to be? What kind of amazing connections will happen? And I just invite people to, open up to the possibility of that in your life every day, and focusing on opening and not contracting, opening to love and not being in a state of fear so much, even when it comes to perfect strangers. Because I've been told sometimes when I've met perfect strangers, like, you just made my day. Thank you so much. And maybe it was just a smile or a hug, or who knows, it's just that the possibilities are infinite when we're open.
I love that. So really stepping into both gifting love, receiving love, allowing the connections, either reaching out when we're not feeling good or when we're feeling good, like releasing the condition, right? On, oh, I'm going to help others who aren't feeling good. It's like, I'm going to help others who are feeling great, who aren't feeling great, and everywhere in between, like just increasing our bandwidth and releasing this idea of only helping the needy. Let's be there with everyone, regardless of where they are on the spectrum, so that we're not subconsciously desiring to feel worse so that we receive more support and people around us. Let's really expand out and welcome in the love, the gifting and receiving of love beyond measure, right? Beyond need, just through pure choice. So I wonder how much we can all gather and just gift and receive that love, make each other's days, and shift what doesn't work and release all judgment of what doesn't work, so that we can receive that awareness of what is really true for us, what speaks to our heart, what fills us with more love, and what allows us to really express that every day and receive that. So I'm so grateful that we had the conversation today and we got together for our 4th episode of Walking the Path. I wonder where things can go from here and how much more we can really gather in person and welcome in the full expression of who we are, and just receiving that love and support beyond measure.
Absolutely. And I just have a closing little message that came to me, and it's about this time of year and the concept of the holidays. And not all of us celebrate any holiday this time of year. I know it's becoming increasingly common that people don't choose to celebrate Christmas or any of the holidays that come this time of year. But I want to still invite everyone that's listening to, consider the gift of giving yourself openly, to your community, to your friends, to your family. Just ask yourself if it's possible to open up a little bit more, to soften those walls that we all tend to build up sometimes, and to give the gift of yourself, being your true self, because we all have something to share with each other, and it's magical when we allow it to happen. So I just got that little message of, we don't need to give gifts necessarily. We are the gift for each other. And I think that's really important to recognize. And this is the time of year where I think a lot of people could use you as the gift more than anything else. And so, yeah, just put that idea in your pocket and sit with it for a little while.
So awesome. Well, thank you everyone who's tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Walking the Path.